Last week I began a sermon series on the theme Questions Asked by Bible Stories, a series I intended to continue this week and uninterruptedly for a number of weeks to follow. But as so often happens, the best laid plans and all that stuff. In looking at my calendar, I realized that today is Father's Day, and I felt it only fair, since this past May I made sure we recognized Mother's Day, to also give fathers their due. So here we are in the next installment of the series. This one on Cain and Abel. We'll have to wait until next week. But making that decision did not totally alleviate my problem. Like every preacher, and I suppose everyone who speaks to groups of people on a regular basis, I have a collection of stories and illustrations, ideas and jokes on just about every subject I might at some point want to deal with. Stories and illustrations, ideas and jokes that can help flesh out a sermon or a speech and help the listener remember what it was about. Indeed, my collection of such material fills more than an entire file cabinet drawer, and I would have to live longer than Methuselah and continue preaching the entire time to ever hope to use it all. To be accurate, I have 38 folders that I have put together over the 52 years I've been in this profession, and 2 of them are labeled Special Days, Holidays. That's where I look for potential Father's Day information. I found numerous sheets on mothers and children, youth and seniors, various holidays like Valentine's Day and St. Patrick's Day and Memorial Day and Independence Day and Labor Day and Thanksgiving. There is even stuff on voting and elections. Now, can you guess how many items I found out of all that material that might help me with Father's Day? 1. Uno. Eins. And since this one page consisted of humorous quips about men and marriage, it wasn't the most positive or productive. There were quickies like, at a cocktail party, one woman said to another, "Aren't you wearing your wedding ring on the wrong finger?" "Yes, I am," she replied. "I married the wrong man." Or how about another one in the same vein? "When a woman steals your husband, there is no better revenge than to let her keep him." Okay, 8. Thank you for that religious response. So the files are pretty much a blank. But I also have books of illustrations and quotations. Surely I could find something there. Yes and no. My favorite worship resources for the Christian year had sections on Mother's Day and Children's Day, Youth Sunday and Commencement Sunday, even Rural Life Sunday, whatever that is, but no Father's Day. And another 5,000 quotations for all occasions contained 5. You can count them on one hand, one-liners concerning fathers, and a whole page on mothers. Talk about feeling neglected. And yet this leads to some interesting speculation. Speculation about something that seems to be happening in our world. I'm talking about the too frequent dissolution of the family, most often resulting from absentee fatherhood. Even our present-day entertainment doesn't help the situation. When I was growing up, the image presented in movies and on television of fatherhood was more often than not positive and uplifting. Oh, it was unreal to at least some extent. I know my father wasn't perfectly reflected in shows like Ozzie and Harriet or Every Father Knows Best, but they were later replaced by fathers portrayed as incompetent or wimps or buffoons, until in just one sparkling moment, Bill Cosby as Cliff Huxtable came along to raise our spirits. I am not here commenting on Bill Cosby, the actor portraying Cliff Huxtable, the character, only on Cliff Huxtable, the character, portrayed by Bill Cosby, the actor. Unfortunately, the trend has again reversed, and fathers as good role models as presented by the entertainment industry are few and far between. Is that new? Is this a phenomenon of just our present day? Of course not. Let's go back to the Bible. And here in the Hebrew Scriptures, which we call the Old Testament, I find it interesting that 2 of the greatest heroes turned out to be pretty lousy fathers, and a prominent figure who is mostly remembered for his failures turned out to be a good one. I refer in the first category to Jacob and David, and in the second to Saul, the king, not the apostle, who after his conversion became known as Paul. Let me explain. Jacob had 12 sons and 1 daughter. On the whole, the family seemed to be pretty close, but Jacob, by playing favorites, initiated some events which produced some pretty drastic results. Joseph, the first son of Jacob's favorite wife Rachel, again playing favorites, was obviously the one to whom Jacob gave pretty much everything: possessions, support, love. And Jacob just thus lorded it over his brothers, flaunting their father's favoritism. Remember the coat of many colors? To which they ultimately responded with violence. They took about as much as they could take, and then one day, when they had had enough, they threw Joseph into a dry well and sold him to slavers. This was plan B, after they decided not to just kill him, which was plan A. That was how far their anger and their jealousy took them. Jacob mourned when they told him that Joseph had been slain by wild animals, and he later transferred the majority of his affection to his second son by Rachel, Benjamin, but never to the same extent. The story has a happy ending, but life had not been pleasant for the other sons when Joseph was still around, and I suspect that there were also difficulties after Joseph's departure, but when Benjamin came onto the scene. Jacob's sons loved him, and they took good care of him in his old age. But I am sure they always resented the way he treated them in comparison to their two Rachel-produced brothers. So, Jacob would not get the Father of the Year award by any stretch of the imagination. But next to David, he was a paragon, and his family in comparison was the picture of perfection. David, you see, who himself came from a close family, couldn't seem to put it together when he tried to raise his own. Having sons and daughters by a succession of different women probably didn't help the situation. It resulted in mothers fighting one another for supremacy, especially for their sons, and it led to violent jealousy among those sons. Indeed, one brother, Amnon, raped his half-sister Tamar. Another brother, Absalom, killed that half-brother Amnon. The same Absalom revolted against David and was killed by David's general Joab. David's youngest son Solomon, upon being named David's successor, killed his half-brother Adonijah. And while all this was going on, David did nothing but weep and wail and gnash his teeth while forgiving each for horrible deed and the one who did it. Put that on television as a reality show, and you'd be following the daily actions of a more dysfunctional family than the Kardashians. Now we come to Saul, the first king of Israel. Saul had his problems. He started out just fine. He seemed to make all the right moves, especially for a king of a country that had never had a king before. After all, he had no role models to follow. But things started to slip away from him, partly because of pressure from the enemies which surrounded his country, and mainly because David came along as the golden boy, and Saul got jealous. And in his jealousy, he didn't handle the situation very well. He acted irrationally, a condition which got worse and worse. However, with all that said, he must have been a great father because all his sons stayed with him loyally and lovingly to the very end, dying with him when his enemies finally overwhelmed him. So what was different about Saul compared to Jacob and David? He treated all his children the same, and he showed his love by giving to them of himself, his time and his energy, his loyalty and his knowledge. There are lessons to be learned here. And we can learn some of those lessons by observing what not to do as we look at our biblical examples. But let me give you some tips regarding good fatherhood on what to do. The following ideas come from something put together by the Energizer Battery Company. Really. Something called 20 Essential Things You Learn from Dad. It starts with, the skills passed down by a father to his children are invaluable. It's more than just how to switch a fuse or properly complete a 1040 form, which we recognize are lessons moms often teach as well. We cherish the less used but just as pertinent know-how only Dad would share. Wasn't it he who explained how to avoid embarrassing yourself when ordering a Chicago-style hot dog, no ketchup allowed, and told you all about the significance of Han Solo shooting first in Star Wars? Some things we may have forgotten, but it was he who taught us so much. And we're genuinely better people for knowing how to properly eat and spit sunflower seeds. The piece goes on to give the following 20 example suggestions to which I think we can all relate. So here are the kinds of things we perhaps learned from Dad. How to sleep outdoors, even on hard ground while looking at the stars blanketing the sky. How to catch lightning bugs and the importance of preserving life by releasing these flickering and floating lights after the fun of capture because life, all life, is fragile and precious. Handkerchiefs are disgusting but useful because despite what they contain, they come in handy for wiping tear-filled eyes or bloody noses and wet seats at ball games after rain delays. How to dance exuberantly using only the upper body with arms flailing in all directions and fingers pointing upward in sheer joy. How to order steak in a restaurant with some degree of rare because there is nothing worse than overcooked meat. How to measure with your feet, whether the distance from the pitcher's mound to home plate or the dimensions of a room or the winner in horseshoes. Shopping carts are meant for racing, while excitingly zipping through the aisles, picking up paper towels and soup cans in the process. There is a proper pillow-to-pillow ratio for building forts in the living room, which might also require the addition of dining room chairs and large books. The only purpose of a throw pillow is to build such forts, because what else can you use them for? Keep your eye on the ball, literally and metaphorically. Good advice from Little League to academia. How to fall asleep anywhere, at the table after Thanksgiving dinner, at a play or concert, in a chair, whenever one is to be found. Few things in life will give greater pleasure than being outdoors on a beautiful day, even if it's raining. How to make a tornado in a box as a science fair project, and/or other great discoveries using telescopes or toolboxes. Picking great movies to watch, those which present the art of storytelling while entertaining and educating. That shoveling snow and mowing the lawn are great workouts and teach something about responsibility at the same time. Lift with your legs and not with your back. Advice given by Dad as he lay on the couch after using the wrong method to move furniture. You've got to earn your Monopoly win, or Scrabble, or Clue, because no one is going to let you win when you get to the real thing. A great meal at a local diner can be just as good or better than one at a fancy restaurant, because expensive is not always all it's cracked up to be. Before road trips, never leave without going to the bathroom and packing a cooler with drinks and snacks, even though too many drinks and snacks require more bathroom stops along the way. Dad will always love you, regardless of whether you eventually disagree on religion or politics or any other subject. What is the chief ingredient in a recipe for good fatherhood? Spending time with one's children. That's really what these 20 recollections I've just shared were all about. So, where have all the fathers gone? Most of them are right where they are supposed to be, with their families providing love and support and insight and wisdom. And those who are not biological fathers can mentor and mold young people who need a man's influence in their lives. In this regard, we can all imitate Saul rather than Jacob and David. And if enough do, we can change the world.